could try to come to a meeting here every night this
Ready to
week.
go?
I have tomorrow and Thursday.
We're
and
at
Friday.
6:58. Are we at 7?
ready.
Yeah, I guess we're at 7.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
Library,
Got 7.
Okay.
Thursday, and
Yeah.
BMP tomorrow.
Are you recording?
Recording in progress.
That's a lot.
Okay. I will call the Town of Middlebury Selectboard meeting of January 10th to order, and the first item is approval of the agenda.
Moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Is there any change on the draft agenda?
Just to note that we will have an executive session for personnel tonight.
So we'll have an executive session for personnel. Is there anything else? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the draft agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Next is approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Is there anything anybody would like to discuss on the consent agenda?
I would. I just have a question.
Yeah?
I'd just like to know what the reason is the farmer's market is no longer coming downtown.
They had their board meeting, and
That's in the mail.
she didn't share with me as to the discussion on that. I could reach out, but their board decided against coming downtown at this time, so I'm not sure. There was,
I'm just disappointed because we've spent so much effort
I
to
agree.
improve the downtown, to be inviting, and we've got a great space, and it brings a lot of people to town. It would benefit all the stores in town. And I think where the farmer's market is now is almost pathetic because it's lost so many people and so many vendors. And I just think it's too bad that they don't feel the same way to support the community, so.
well, I was disappointed too, but it is a private
Yep,
venue, and
sure is.
I don't know, maybe it's something the BMP would take up as far as having an additional farmer's market in the downtown. So I think there are some vendors that prefer
yeah.
to come downtown.
Okay, thanks, that's it.
Anything else?
There is a very small typo on line 181. It says Carpenter said it doesn't make sense to send out the tax bills before they're accurate. It should be they are. It says they are.
Okay. Anything else?
Oh, yeah.
No,
There.
they're there.
Abstaining from the minutes, okay? Then all in favor of approving the consent agenda with the minor amendment to the minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? And we have one abstention on the minutes section. Next is citizen comments. Is there somebody here for something that's not on the agenda? Judy?
I don't know, is it okay, can you guys speak up a little louder, or is it
Yeah.
just me?
Yeah, we can try to.
We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
That's always the first question you ask. I thought it'd be proactive.
Okay, so I have a couple things, and I know Kathleen's gonna tell me when I'm up to 15 seconds. So the first, thank you for approving an amendment to your previous letter to the state, clarifying that the need for periodic noise updates. I'd really like to see them happen quarterly, so things didn't get averaged out, but semi-annually is a place to start. And by the way, on the weekend, there was considerable noise at the airport on Sunday morning, and I finally filed a complaint and got an immediate and gracious and appreciative response from Chris, is it Beitzel? Whoever handles the communication, which was just like awesome. It was awesome. Two,
What was the noise?
it was it was a plane, and it was the same plane, because it was red on the nose, red on top, red on the wingtips, red on the tail, so very distinguishable, loud. But apparently work needed to be done on it. This is an owner in Florida, and the only time they could do it was Sunday morning between like 10 and 11.
From Chris's email, he explained that there was an extensive work done on that airplane, and they were doing test flights to check everything's okay. And he also somehow mentioned that there was nothing illegal they did. That's what he
No,
mentioned.
it wasn't
Yeah.
illegal.
Yeah,
It's
but
just
that's
that
what
it
he
was
said, yeah.
Annoying.
Okay.
So, but, and I asked him why it couldn't be done, like, during the work week, and he explained. Okay.
So
Second,
15 seconds,
I'm sorry?
15 seconds.
No.
Quick.
Don't panic, just
Come
take
on
a
now.
breath. Let's keep going, keep going.
All right.
Keep going.
So you guys, like so many of us, are busy, we're civically minded, we're civically active. And at times we get tired. And so I want to express my gratitude for doing what you do. Next, from my vantage point, I just want you to know that I appreciate when citizens like me attend these meetings. It might be a pain, but when we come, we're treated respectfully, appropriately, at the time, with adequate time for questions and comments. And like Chris did to me, he said thank you. He said thank you for attending or notifying me. And that always helps. Last, and this is something I wish to proffer. So we've talked about the fact that the airport sits on top of the town's aquifer, probably the aquifer for most of Addison County. The town has one testing site on Route 116 North, and East Middlebury has a testing site by the Methodist Church. The airport actually has 2 testing sites on their property. They do not use them. They are not, according to VTrans, required to use them, which I find problematic. It would be another addendum to your letter, but I would very much appreciate asking the state, requesting VTrans to start utilizing those test sites. And then to find out what is being tested for and what isn't, because we all know that things like lead in the water in Detroit that was not determined until after people became ill. We know that PFOAs in Bennington were not tested for until people became ill. I can provide you with all kinds of information on the metabolite of the,
Judy, where did you find out about the 2 test sites where did you find out about the 2 test sites at the airport?
I asked Michelle
Okay,
Boomhauer,
okay.
and she said we do not have to test them.
But you know for sure there's
She
two
told me
wells
that
there
there
or
are
something?
2 sites there.
Okay.
I don't know where they are,
Yeah,
but she's told me there are 2, but they're not required to use
Okay.
them.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
I'm Richard McCurr.
Can you come forward? So,
Yeah.
as we actually have a listening audience, there's quite a few people who watch it on TV, so.
Okay. And I apologize because I saw something in an earlier agenda perhaps that I can't find again. And it was a request for people who are interested, and I am, in being the town's representative for the Economic Development Council. It fits my background, and I would love to do something like that if I can just touch base perhaps with you and find out how to throw my name in the hat.
Fantastic. So we are just advertising starting tomorrow.
Okay.
For candidates, with the deadline of February 1st. So the select board will be making an appointment shortly after that.
Okay, well,
But we'll
since
make
it's not
note
going to
your
snow between
interest.
now and then, I'll have plenty of time to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's in the draft, in the consent agenda, is probably
Okay.
where you saw it.
Yeah,
And so it will be listed in the attachments that
Great.
are a part of the agenda.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for stepping up.
Is there anybody else? Okay.
One more.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you. Please.
My name's Brooke Holzhammer. I live over in East Middlebury. And I wanted to come in tonight just because I know we only have like about another week or so before the public comment period ends and everybody's getting their last minute thoughts together. And I have a few last minute findings I wanted to share with the board as we get our ducks in a row here. I wasn't sure if you were familiar with Bill H2 that was recently introduced by Representative Corcoran of Bennington. H2, this is relating to, I'm sorry, like just to, with the airport master plan and the hangars that are being pushed through, hopefully, they're hoping without the full Act 250 process. H2, and wanting to piece that out a little more, is H2 was just brought forward, and it is an act relating to the Act 250 jurisdiction over aircraft hangars. The bill proposes to exempt.
Can I ask a question
I'm
for
sorry?
you? I think Andy had told us, but isn't it that it pulls it out of local zoning and it's
It
just in
does.
Act 250?
It says, the wording is, the bill proposes to exempt certain aircraft hangars from the jurisdiction of the state land use and development law known as Act 250.
Oh, really? Okay, that's
That is the
different.
wording on the bill. Being that these hangars, the proposed location is in the water source protection area for Middlebury. And the consulting firm that Vermont Trans hired to look into this, to create this master plan, has blatantly declared that they have done zero environmental studies and taken zero environmental issues into consideration when making their recommendations for the master plan. Now we have this bill on the table, which is pretty vague and even sets us up for a little more worry. So I wanted to bring that to the attention of the select board so that you guys can consider that when making your recommendations. The other question I had was the gas tanks at the airport that now I was looking into the fact that it's currently being held in a temporary tanker, I believe. I don't know if that's still the case. When I tried to go through and look and find out what actually occurred to make them move it to a tanker and speed up the process of the creating a new fuel tank holding system, I couldn't find any information about what happened with the old holding system, or I'm wondering if there's a way for citizens who are concerned about lead in the water, knowing that the gas being held there is the largest source of lead pollution to air.
Yeah.
And that the EPA proposes in 2023 an endangerment finding for lead emissions from aircraft engines, the same exact type of aircraft that is in Middlebury, East Middlebury Airport, that operate on this fuel, this leaded fuel. There are new studies coming to light now that show that the proximity where people live in relation to an airport that uses this fuel, like the airport in East Mid, that there are marked findings of elevated levels of lead in the children in other areas in other neighborhoods that have residential airports like we do. So this study has been done. The EPA is taking it and running with it in 2023. This is all new information coming to light, and we are sitting with our fuel in our water source protection area in a temporary fuel tanker. How can citizens find out more about what's going on?
That was actually in the airport notes.
Right, and it just says we're upgrading temporary tanker. It says nothing about what happened to the old tanker or give us a timeline about when the new tanker is going to be ready.
Yeah, the old one failed inspection, and there was no evidence of it leaking, but they'll know for sure when they pull it out of the ground. It's underground.
So how can the citizens who are drinking that water that lies under that failed inspection tank holding leaded gasoline, how do we find out about that? How can we?
Well, we're all drinking that
We're all
water.
drinking the same water.
Oh, I'm concerned for every one of us,
Yeah, but we
believe me.
test that water.
But
Okay, well, that.
We test the
except
water
that-
you drink.
Okay, what about the actual, so that kind of, I'm interested in what Judy was saying about these two testing sites that aren't being used. I'm concerned when the people from the consulting firm say we are not considering it an environmental concern of ours at all. I'm concerned when I'm seeing more bills that erode our power as citizens to protect our natural resources like our drinking water. And I'm seeing things moving forward on a federal level with the EPA. I really feel like if we don't take all of this into consideration and we just find ourselves being rushed into this decision and being made to feel like this is inevitable, it's not. It's foolish to move forward at all. I believe there should be a moratorium on any growth whatsoever, and any airport that uses leaded gasoline in a residential area, because it's proven that it's the largest cause of lead pollution to air, and the most release of lead is during takeoff, engine thrust, and landing, which is all happening in a very residential neighborhood. And how foolish of us to just forge ahead with this growth and master plan that's going to allow it to happen more when we're only just learning the real implications of what this is. And that's after a failed tank inspection, holding leaded gasoline, leaded aviation fuel in our water source protection area.
yeah, so I think we've had enough time. This wasn't on the agenda, and we're supposed to just keep it at 2 minutes. But in fairness,
the
just
deadline of the
just-
public comments that
yeah,
I feel like is.
In fairness, just to make sure we kind of have some closure to this, there's a number of issues you're bringing up here. It's not just one
No, it's
thing.
just-
So, hold on,
Where
please.
can I find out more?
Yep.
About that failed inspection?
Well, you could request it from the state, but the failed inspection was that there's the fuel itself. What the issue is that the tank on the inside is starting to corrode, and so the fuel is not safe to run in an aircraft. It wasn't an issue that they found fuel outside of the tank or that they found leaks. That tank will have to be removed from the ground, and they will do a complete, they'll have to check all of the soil around that tank, and we'll know more once they find out. We know what they know at this point, is that the tank is not of quality that they can keep aircraft fuel in. So that's number one. Number two, you had so many things there. Let me just see if I can remember them all. The H2 bill, that's a long way to go, and I think that's something that our legislators will be working on, and I would disagree with that bill as well. I think exempting any one thing from our land use laws is probably, and I'm not sure the rationale behind it. Every bill has got to have a purpose, and, I'd have to read more into it, but that's got a long process of testimony. It'll go from, if it started in the House, it's got to pass the House, and then it's got to go to the Senate. You'll have plenty of time to testify in that, and we could speak to our legislators on that. So that's a different process. As far as the testing sites, I have to talk to Michelle. I don't know about that. That was,
That's
Judy
new
brought that up.
information for me, too. I just wanted to make
yeah,
sure H2
and-
is considered, because we do have an open,
Yeah.
issue that would be very much affected by that right now. And we do have a closing, comments period approaching quickly.
So,
I wanted
that
to
was
bring-
the other. So the comments period is on a master plan. That is, the master plan is more of a business plan, and the Act 250 is a different process. And so you've got,
But the master plan should be subject to the Act 250.
absolutely is.
So with,
Absolutely is.
hangers and all.
And our comments are to the master plan here and requesting on
Okay.
activities, so.
Okay, so that's, yeah, I appreciate that. I was just bringing to light the EPA findings and the H2 bill on the table. And just to be clear, so there, as of now, there's no way for public citizens to check on the state of leaded fuel tankers within water source protection areas. That, there's no easy route for that as of right now.
I don't
you
think
know
so.
of. Okay.
I don't think so.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Andy?
And I'll be brief because I know you want to move on, but I do want to talk about the airport. And it was, I want to support Judy and Brooke in some of their comments. I made a comment yesterday, last week. I asked if the select board would stand by its commitment made in March to have a public hearing where where VTrans would present to the select board and to the community about some of these issues. I think that is important. You see some of the frustration tonight with some of the comments from Brooke and Judy and others. I think it is important. It's different than a public hearing that was the two public hearings. I believe it's different than the two public hearings they've had on the master plan itself, because the host would be the select board and the community would be able to pose questions directly to VTrans rather than VTrans presenting just a show and tell of what their master plan would be. So I think it is distinctive enough to stand by your commitment that you made in March 22nd meeting, where it was said that that before VTrans goes public, at the with the process of permitting, that they would come and present to the select board and the community and provide an opportunity to question where they are. I think the questions to them will be broader than the master plan. I think they haven't addressed some of the environmental issues. They just say that that's not part of the master plan. That's a key thing. They don't talk about climate change, the use of herbicides, electrification. Those are not addressed in the master plan. So there's wider issues to the town of Middlebury that would be sufficient to have a full public hearing, as you promised back in March, whereby members of the public can question VTrans on wider issues beyond the master plan, because they seem to hide behind that and not want to address any of the key environmental issues that are raised by the development of the airport. So that's my first request. And at that March meeting, there was a proposal that we have a Citizen Advisory Committee. I think that CAC was what it was raised. At that time, I think the select board got to appoint 2 people to the Technical Advisory Committee that was advising the master plan, one of which was Eugene, and the second person was Nick. And I haven't heard from Nick, and I don't think he's been at a public meeting about some of these issues, particularly around, as you're drafting this letter now about the master plan, given that he is the select board representative to the TAC, where is he and what is his point of view on this? Has he seen the letter? Has he input into the letter? Because he certainly hasn't done that publicly, and it just seemed that that was a lost opportunity if you're going to appoint a person to the technical advisory committee about the master plan. The least that you can ask is that when it comes to comment on the master plan, that he actually provides comment. So I don't quite know where Nick is on this, and so those are my, I think those are my 2 points. So I would request the full public hearing so that we can bring in broader issues, and also ask Nick for his input into the actual letter before it gets sent.
And I know Nick would be happy to come in and talk about it. We just haven't put it on. We talk, do a download. I mean, we do select board business. There's a lot of select board business that happens outside of this public meeting, and so, you know, we'll get Nick in here so people can ask him.
Okay.
It's not a problem.
And as to the public meeting?
I have to talk to Michelle. So I have to just ask her if she'd be willing to do that. I think the intent when we talked about that is they would give their final presentation, which is what my concept was that they would do what they did already. When I made that commitment is that they would come and present to us, and they have twice. So I hear what you're saying. It's a little different than what we had talked about at the time. What we were talking about was the planning of the master plan, but I get it, and I'll see if that's something, but we've got, it will be, I think that's probably appropriate after they've finalized their master
Yes,
plan.
yes, absolutely.
And so,
But there are broader issues that are raised in the master.
which is different than what we were talking about at the time, which was the master plan, so, but I get it.
Well, you
No, I-
talked about doing it before permitting, is how you phrased it at the March.
Which was the master plan, which is being done before permitting, so,
Okay, I appreciate it,
I
thanks.
got it. And I did talk to Michelle today, and you should be hearing something from her shortly.
Okay,
So, okay?
appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else here for something that's not on the agenda? Okay. Any hands up in listening audience?
Nope.
No? Okay. We're gonna, liquor license application, second-class liquor license application was submitted in December to the Vermont Department of Liquor and Lottery, Division of Liquor Control, by Vermont Wine Shop, doing business as Hare and the Dog, Middlebury. The proposed location of the license is 260 Court Street, Suite 3 in Middlebury, and Scott Hirschberg is listed as the business principal. Is there action on that?
Yes, the select board needs to approve that.
So, to approve that, yeah. So is Scott here? Are you Scott? I thought so, maybe, yeah. Come on forward and tell us what great things you're gonna do here. Just give us a 1-minute quick sketch.
Well, as you know, we're up in Virgins as well. So we own Virgins Wine Shop,
Yeah?
where we've been there for about 2 years. There was the opportunity to come down to Middlebury. I'm from Cornwall. Ned, my partner, is also a Middlebury High School and resident and busybody around town. So we, one of the things that we sort of highlight in our store in Virgins, which has really done well, is sort of the Vermont product push. And from displays to tastings to things like that, we've really had a good time with whether it's craft beer and liquor, products outside of that, cheeses and things like that. So we decided to sort of bring more of a market feel to Middlebury.
Awesome.
Yeah. So DLC is very excited to sort of have us. We're going to get sort of every product possible and be able to fit sort of all the Vermont products. And the store looks absolutely amazing. Old barn wood from 48 Main Street that we renovated and those
love
kinds
it.
of things. So we're really excited about it.
Are you Ned Horton's partner?
I am Ned Horton's partner.
Tell him I say hi.
I will, absolutely.
Wow.
We
I-
met by chance 2 years ago when I moved here, and it sort of, we blossomed into sort of doing all these projects.
I haven't seen him in forever.
Well, he just went back to Tennessee, or no, he's actually in Maine. He brought one of his
Yeah,
daughters.
I know
up
he's a
to
Titans
college.
fan. He's,
He is, he's a little disappointed in what happened.
yeah.
So where is it going to be?
The old Olympia Sports.
That's what was.
I wonder what's going on there.
Is Canaford's getting out of the Vermont liquor store?
Hannaford's is out of the
Business.
liquor store
done.
business. It went up
Okay.
for bid. It's an application process.
Okay.
And us being a licensee already.
Yeah.
And them working with us and knowing us already sort of made sense for all of us. And so liquor is already
Great.
out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Neat.
That's a better spot because you can have more. I mean, it was pretty tiny.
It
Very
was
tiny.
tiny
Really
and it's really,
constrained.
we
Yeah.
have 4,000 square feet. So, the ability to do some really fun stuff and sort of bring some life to that shopping area, was really attractive to us.
Great.
Questions? If not, pleasure of the board.
I will move to approve the second class liquor license application for Vermont Wine Shop LLC, DBA Hare and the Dog Middlebury.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right.
Thank you very much, guys.
Welcome to our
I
community.
appreciate it.
welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Public hearing on our budget. So tonight's hearing is an opportunity for the Select Board to take public testimony on the proposed FY24 general fund. In accordance with 24 VSA, Section 127-1302, the board is conducting a public hearing to take questions and comments from the Middlebury community regarding the proposed FY24 general fund budget. In a moment, I'll turn the floor over to Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey, who will lead off with an update on revisions to the draft budget that have been made since the board's last discussion. After her presentation, if you have a question or comment regarding the budget and would like to address the Select Board, please raise your hand and approach the microphone. With that, I'll open the public hearing and turn the meeting over to Kathleen.
So I appreciate that grand introduction, as not many changes have been made to the draft budget so far. But I'm pleased to present, or I will present the FY24 budget to you. Again, the revenue, the taxes raised last year were $7,881,813. This year, we're proposing an amount of $8,810,013, an increase of $928,200. Overall, the budget increase proposed in this budget is from $11,928,233 to $12,926,973, an increase of $998,740. So I want to just go over the major drivers to that we discussed back on December 13. We have wages going up $326,000, benefits except for workers' comp going up $254,000, workers' comp due to an adjustment in our experience modification is actually going down $75,000. Vehicle fuel, as everyone can appreciate, is being increased by $23,000. Equipment fund transfers to cover increases in the cost of vehicles, $70,000. The PD adaptive reuse bond, an increase of $124,000. Capital improvements are increased $92,000. So just these major drivers total $816,000, accounting for the lion's share of our increase. So I'll get to the tax rate impact of all of this as proposed. And once we go over that, I'll go over some possible revenue enhancements to offset some of the expenditure increases. Hold on. So. Here we go. So, as proposed, with the one revision from the last draft of the budget you saw, being the fire department conferences were reduced by $3,000, as mentioned by Fire Chief David Shaw. So as proposed, we're looking at about a 9.5 cent increase on the tax rate. And I had provided in your packet the impact that that would have on households of various assessed values. Then I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can just go right into the revenue enhancements that I'd like to open for discussion.
This is where the magic starts.
Well, I don't know about that. I want you to share in some of my thinking about these things. So one possibility is increasing the amount of the local option tax that we have budgeted. In the current draft of the budget, we're looking at $1,050,000 compared to our FY22 actual of $1,271,000, which is our highest year ever. So I'm proposing a conservative increase of $50,000 to our estimate, not knowing what a possible downturn in the economy might do for us. But if you wanted to look in your crystal balls and comment on that, that's one possible area of additional revenue.
So are you saying there that will be an additional
That would-
local option tax, the 1 million?
You're right.
100,000. Not all of that gets transferred. Is that our budget? That's our budget portion
That's
Got it.
what we budget
Got it.
for.
for our, yeah. Okay.
So that would include an allocation for capital improvements and for our debt service for the Cross Street Bridge Fund. So currently, what we have for the Cross Street Bridge Fund, we have our FY24 projection of $1,050,000 for the local option tax. The college gift for the Cross Street Bridge was $600,000, making our total revenue from those two items as $1,650,000. The debt service on the Cross Street Bridge is $890,000, which leaves us $759,000 that we use to offset the cost of capital improvements each year. So if you increased that amount by $50,000, you'd be reducing taxes and increasing the amount of funding for capital improvements from the Cross Street Bridge local option tax. General fund interest, we, based on our average daily balances, and 2.5% interest rate, it would be looking at a significant increase in interest. Previously, as everyone else, we were receiving a paltry sum of money. And so for general fund, estimating $125,000 in interest income, which would be an increase of $100,000 from our current budget of $25,000. Cross Street Bridge Fund interest, we didn't even budget for it last year because it was so insignificant. Based on our current balance there, looking at $75,000. In the before times, we used to transfer that money to the Cross Street Bridge Fund, so retaining it in the general fund would be a change there for you, just to keep in mind. That was several years ago. So that was local option tax, interest. And then this, these next couple of items are something new, a proposed change in approach for you. Taking a transfer from the Cross Street Bridge Fund to the general fund to cover the increased costs of capital improvements, increased in expense of capital improvements, which includes two significant bondable items, being the design work on the Ilsley Public Library for $163,000 and Court Monroe Charles intersection expenses of $50,000. So the thought would be, if those projects advance, we would bond for them and reimburse the Cross Street Bridge Fund for these expenses when they happen, when we bond for the projects. And then, secondly, also a transfer from the Cross Street Bridge Fund. Back in January 2020, we discussed with Victoria the possibility of decreasing the amount of time we bond for, to minimize interest expense on the bond. So for the PD adaptive reuse project, we bonded for 7 years instead of our usual 20 years. So the thought was that we would use the balance from the Cross Street Bridge Fund to help pay for that shorter term and save on interest expense there. And then finally, using a small allocation from our amount of ARPA funds for increasing our finance office staff, the third person in that office from part-time to full-time. So those are some ideas. We don't really, you can think about them, and you have time at your next meeting to finalize the budget and the warning. But with that, happy to open it up for other questions.
Victoria, you've got to have a few questions. Ross will get us started here. Ross, come on forward.
I have, go ahead.
Good evening, Ross Conrad, I live in Bourbon Drive. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kathleen, but the major drivers you pointed out, they didn't appear to be like one-time expenses. These are things that are going to go up and normally go up, and so we can expect this kind of thing in the future. And at least one of those, the ARPA funds, in terms of our income, was a one-time. So what we're looking at is almost a 10% increase in our property taxes. Well, I think you all realize that, it's only going to take not too many years before our property taxes at this kind of rate of increase is going to double. And that's just not sustainable. And so I really strongly encourage you to find ways to bring this down dramatically, because 10% increase in property taxes every year.
Ross, that's what these are to do. These are to reduce the property tax.
Right, they're not all.
Very creative.
Yep, that's good, that's good. But we think we need to look at the future too, because this is gonna, if we can't kind of get a better handle, you're gonna be stuck with, and you can only be so creative. She's incredibly creative, but I imagine there's limitations on how creative you can be, especially as time goes on.
Well, look at the tax rate increase over the last 4 or 5 years. It's been close to zero. So,
Maybe I've gotten
she's doing
spoiled.
amazing things. You have been spoiled.
I'm just here to encourage you to do as much as you possibly can. Okay?
And I would encourage you to talk about the school funding, which is more of an impact on your property taxes than what we're doing. So take that enthusiasm to the others too.
Well, I'm here right now, and you're here. Are you on the school board?
No.
Okay, well, then
I appreciate the thought. I would just comment that we have grappled with this, and some of these are things, the big drivers are the personnel stuff, and it was a result of renewed contracts and what was happening with wages and benefits, the cost of wages and benefits throughout the state, and staying competitive. I think what is interesting is Kathleen has brought us a solution that is largely out of ARPA funding. It's not ARPA funding that's driving this down.
it's a small part.
38,000 of a, $1.5 million of other funding. And a big part of this is coming from the Cross Street Bridge Fund. And this is something that we have had the town supportive of. And I think it's really going to be important for us to make sure the town understands how critical that is to retaining it's not a zero income increase budget, but keeping our budget at least in check. Because there were some at the last time we talked about it that said, well, it's good when the bridge is paid for, we'll do away with that. I think that's our one opportunity to have the entire community and users of Middlebury help support the services that we have to fund on Middlebury property owners' backs. So we totally hear you. I think getting it down to a 5% increase when that's below the inflationary rate is quite a job. I'm not happy with it, but I'm proud that we were able to get it into that level at this point, and we'll keep working it right up to the last minute. But some of the things that Kathleen has grabbed here, I was going to comment on later, which is there are areas that we have funds that sit, and now even though we're getting it's kind of the offset of the increase in costs, but we also have an increase in income in those back investment areas because the money is actually finally returning some funds, and she's saying, well, why don't we use those funds to offset the increase? And I think that's what we need to make sure people are supportive of as well, because we should be using those excess funds. We have a good fund balance, and our cross-street bridges. We've analyzed that year after year, and it's very healthy. The balance in the Cross Street Bridge when we look at projected maintenance costs. Now, if we had an earthquake and something happened, we got a different story. But from all reasonable expectations, we're in a good place, so.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, I'm not against giving the town employees better, raises and taking care. I think actually they're probably underpaid, but, I think they deserve everything they can get. That's not the issue. It's
Yeah,
just,
no, I understand, but,
Your point's
and I,
well
and I,
taken.
and I get that, we're all taxpayers too, so.
thank you.
And Ross, just for your future calculations, the rule of 70 says if you divide 70 by a rate, you find the doubling time. So at 10% increases, it takes 7 years to double.
There you go.
Whoa, that's encouraging, isn't it?
Thanks, Andy. Better now. Basically saying at the current rate, if it was about 10% every year increase, it would take 7 years to double our taxes.
That makes you feel better though, didn't it? Wow.
Much.
Yeah, geez.
Victoria, you've never gone without asking us on something.
Well, no, Ross has said a lot of it, and I don't have any well, I was wondering why it seems like the Public Works Department seems to be very, very modest, and even some reduction in there. Is this manpower or?
I think some of that is because we're pulling some of those out and they're ARPA funded, right?
Primarily on this year's Public Works budget, there was a shift. There was one full-time employee that we split between the DPW and the Recreation Department, and that is shifted full-time to the Recreation Department now. So there was a slight decrease.
Oh, on the manpower.
in the manpower
And,
budgeted in the Public Works Department.
See, I knew Eagle Eyes would find something here.
I'm just wondering also what, now I can't find it, the archiving, $30,000 for, under municipal building? What is,
7 pallets of records that didn't fit in the municipal building, and they've been stored at,
Various locations around Vermont.
Various locations around Middlebury. They were on a trailer this week moving to some other hidden site, but the idea is to try to get them digitized.
so that's a one-time,
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah.
all right. I don't, with just lots of little things, but I appreciate your effort to find ways to make the impact more palatable. And thank goodness for the bridge fund, because it's helped us a lot in the option tax here.
yeah, it really has.
And, the contracts, for employee salaries and benefits, where are we in, is that different phasing on different departments, or is it?
We have 2 labor contracts, one with our DPW clerical and library workers, and one with our police department. Both were finalized and ratified in June of this year. So we're in a 3-year contract with them. So
Okay.
we have a good handle on what our
What's coming in
increases will
the
be
future?
next year.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome. Behind you first, Laura.
Quick, I've been tasked by several East Middlebury residents to please request that the Public Works Department budget for a 4-foot plow for the sidewalks instead of a 6-foot plow. Because all the edges of all the sidewalks in East Middlebury, they've all had the turf thrown back over on it. It is terrible. It's gonna be a huge problem this spring. Get a 4-foot plow for the guy that plows the sidewalks. It really makes a huge difference. I looked at Howard and Linda Kelton's place today, and their lawn is just a foot on each side of their sidewalk is trash.
Where do we have 6-foot sidewalks?
It's,
Downtown,
sorry?
like, there's wider.
Yeah,
I
okay,
can
well, East
understand. They may
Middlebury's
wanna have both.
where I walk, so, yeah. Something to think about.
Okay, duly noted. Laura.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at our public safety budget, and in the communications portion, just trying to understand, what that bump is about. That's a big bump.
What line item?
It is starting at 514 communications to 520 total communications. So there's 118,000 in that increase in that section alone. So I'm just trying to understand what that bump is about.
There is,
Oh, there's the answer.
Whoa.
come on in, you can sit right over by Farhat.
I was gonna make some things up. This is much better.
Dispatch.
Laura, that went up because we transferred a position from patrol into communications. We've been having trouble filling all our patrol positions. One of the patrol positions covered dispatch in the evenings, so we decided to replace the patrol officer position with a dispatcher. So therefore, there's an additional salary in there, and there's one less salary in patrol.
Okay, so it's a shift that way.
We just moved, yeah, we moved.
All right, but it still seems like there's a bigger overall increase in public safety than the other departments. So is that just staffing adequately now? Is that what that
Well,
is?
there are a couple of things.
Yeah, about half of the increase is due to the contract settlement with the police union. When we did this budget, the current year budget, it was in the late summer of 2021. The union contract was expiring in June of 2022, so we had to estimate what the salaries were going to be. The contract settlement came in higher than what the salaries are, so it was it's a higher increase than what we had.
Okay. So that's
So
it.
that added a bit more to it. There are a number of things in there as well. We've had a big increase in, I don't know what you'd call them, technical fees and things like that. In other words, Microsoft is charging us about $4,000 a year now just so that we can have Microsoft products on our computers. That we didn't have that before.
Yeah.
So that, we are paying, we'll be paying $23,000 as part of the finance on our dispatch console that we could not get any financing for, other financing for. To offset that, which you don't see, is that we furloughed one of our cruisers. In other words, we were supposed to get 2 new cruisers in this budget year. We're only getting 1, and that would cover the cost of that dispatch console payment.
And with regard to the cruisers, I know you made the decision to not go with hybrids this year because of what I understood to be maintenance issues.
We can't get them.
Oh, you couldn't get them?
The car we ordered in January last year
Oh,
has
okay.
just gotten a work order to be built. So we're not going to get that for probably another 4 months.
Okay.
We may get the car we ordered last month before we get that.
Okay, I'm glad to understand that.
We also had some issues. One of the cars, there was a problem with the engine. It was down for probably 4, 5, 6 months. We couldn't use it while they were doing work. There was a problem with the electric motor in it. So it's, kind of on the bleeding edge of this. These cars were probably not, at this early stage, designed for this type of work. So we're a little cautious before we jump both feet first into ordering another one, especially since it's taken us 1.5 years to get one as it is.
Okay, thanks for your explanation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's it.
Are there any other questions on the draft budget? Okay, well, if there are no further comments regarding the draft,
Well, I'm just wondering, what are your next steps? But maybe you can answer that in the next part of your agenda. I don't.
Next steps, we'll finalize the revenue piece. I'm still working with department heads to see if there's anything that we can pinch out of this budget, and we'll present that to the select board at its next meeting, if I do find something. For some things, being optimistic.
it won't go up, but it, we'll see if we can keep working it. So then I'm going to call the public hearing closed, and the select board will finalize the FY24 budget at its January 24th meeting.
Oh, we have
there's-
Ann Christie. Hi, Ann.
Yes, hi Kathleen, that's great that you can zoom me in here. Is it okay to take a moment to jump from the current agenda to the bit that I had?
and that was scheduled for early in the meeting. If you want to wait, we can do it at the end of the meeting, but we have people that have been sitting here all night, and right now, we're in the middle of the general fund budget public hearing. So if you could, if you want to just hang with us, then I'll give you some time towards the end, okay?
That sounds great. I'll switch computers and be mobile so that I can be sure to be present. Thank you, Brian.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So, then I thank those of you who came and participated and provided some feedback on the budget. With that, we have continued review. Kathleen, did you have some more to?
I don't have anything else to add, but we have Mary Claire.
So Mary Claire is going to give us the Tri-Valley Transit presentation.
Hello.
Hello.
Mary Claire Krogan, Tri-Valley Transit. Thank you for inviting me. And in return, I'd like to invite any of you who would like to come to our facility. I'll bring you around and show you what we do.
Are you managing the larger route, all the routes and everything still out of the Middlebury facility?
So we have 2 operational regions. Out of the Addison region, we have routes in Addison County and then commuter routes that go down to Rutland and up to Burlington.
Yeah.
And then in the Orange region, there's some local circulators, there's some shopper services, and then there are commuters that bring people over to like Lebanon, White River Junction.
So you have an office and operations staff over at the other facility as well? Okay.
Yes. So we merged in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. I think the last time I addressed this group, we were coming at you as Actor. Now
Yes.
with Tri-Valley Transit, we went from serving 23 towns to 51 towns, and we go statewide now. We had a budget of about $3.5 million back then, and the 4 times I think you called it. And now in our bigger configuration, we're just under $7 million.
That was what I was kind of trying to understand, because I think maybe it was because of COVID. I don't remember ever getting a briefing and understanding what happened, so.
So we went into a management agreement to oversee the financial operations of Stagecoach, which was on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And they were going to lose, they had already lost their Medicaid non-emergency medical transportation contract, which was a big deal for people who needed to get to doctor's appointments with no other transportation. They were on the verge of losing all of their bus service, and we stepped in and we saved them basically.
Yeah.
So that's
Wow.
a success story.
Yeah.
And in the process of improving facilities throughout the state, I'm happy to say that we have achieved net zero, which is pretty exciting. I know you have a carbon neutrality goal here as well. And we generate all the electricity that we use for our operations, so that's pretty exciting. Let me back up. I got ahead of myself a little bit. So our system-wide in FY22, we provided 158,302 rides, and of that total, 51,449 were originated right here in Middlebury. That's pickups only. And like many sectors nationally, we've been bringing ourselves back after COVID. We've seen, costs going up, workforce reduction, but we have rebuilt our workforce to nearly 100%, and we've been bringing back services that made sense to bring back. We're still down to 2 in-town buses, because that's what makes sense right now based on demand. And we've cut back a little bit on the midday and Saturday service to Rutland, because that was underperforming and it didn't make sense to bring that back at that time. But overall in FY22, our system served 26% more rides than the prior year. So we're doing pretty well. Our budget request for FY24 is level with past 8+ years, $26,098. I mentioned that our overall projected budget is just under $7 million. And the money that we raise from towns is part of local match. So 80% of our funding comes from government grants, and they require that we raise 20% locally. And we use many methods to raise that money. Some of that is town appropriations, which is less than 5% of the required match. We also have relationships with Middlebury College, Dartmouth Hitchcock, for institutional support. We encourage sponsorships from businesses and acknowledge that support with exterior bus ads. I believe Champlain Valley Equipment has been one of the sponsors in the past. Thank you very much. We do direct mailing. We also are an approved nonprofit with support from United Ways, both here in Addison County and Granite United, which serves the Upper Valley and part of New Hampshire. And we have a development committee who meets regularly and continues to seek ways to diversify our funding streams. Special highlights, I think I mentioned already that we are net neutral, making all of our own electricity. We are just launching our first strategic plan for the next 5 years as a unified Tri-Valley Transit. And our goals are to be one of the best employers with livable wages in central Vermont, to standardize all the best practices across TVT regions, and to leverage technology to its best advantage, maintain our infrastructure and passenger amenities to optimize safety and service, and to explore transit innovations and improve passenger and community communications to meet more need. And we are, to further our environmental mission, we're part of a statewide initiative to electrify part of our fleet. This is pilot, as Chief Hanley said, we're on the bleeding edge. We're not sure how these vehicles will perform, but the size that we need are cutaways for this service area. Nobody has cutaways currently on the road, so they had to go through what's called Altoona safety testing.
Can you describe a cutaway for us?
Cutaways are like the 14 and 18 passenger buses that you see here locally.
Gotcha.
That make sense for our size streets. And
Smaller
our,
footprint.
Yeah. So like Marble Valley, they have electric vehicles. Chittenden County, they have electric vehicles, but they're the big Gilligs that are purchased at scale for large urban communities. And they're kind of inventing these smaller ones for us. We got a grant from VEIC before COVID, but then they had to invent the buses, test them for safety, and in the meantime, the world caught on fire and prices of everything went up. So VTrans is reassessing that grant award against the impacts of the increased costs. And I think we're getting closer to ordering those, but then we can expect with market shortages that it may take another 18 months to actually get them here and get them in service. And the plan is to have 2 operating here in Addison County and 2 in our Bradford service area. And as part of our strategic plan for exploring innovations, we've been looking into microtransit as a possible solution for Middlebury. If you'd like to go to page 2, there's a cool graphic on there that shows you what we're thinking of. So far we've completed a feasibility study that shows that it can help us reach more people, more places.
Can you explain microtransit to us?
Sure.
What is it?
Yep, I'm gonna dive right into it right now.
Okay, thank you.
So Okay, I'll jump to what it is and then I'll tell you our progress. So it's a hybrid version of what we're doing with traditional shuttles and with our demand response volunteer private cars, picking up people at their homes and taking them door to door to appointments. For the rider, it will feel like using Uber. They'll have an app on their phone, or they can use any computer with internet to go on the app and book a ride. It'll all be by reservation. If they don't have access to technology, they can just pick up the phone and speak to a dispatcher, and we can book the rides for them. And so this green zone shows what our consultants have recommended. You see there's a blue line right in the center that represents the MSB Hannaford, which happens to be the most successful route in our entire system. So we're not gonna mess around with that. Is it okay if I move around a little bit?
Yeah.
The one change they are proposing is to shorten it, so the turnaround point would be at Hope, and then so that Metro Transit doesn't become overwhelmed by College, which we're assuming will be early adopters of this service. The bus will take that save time and go all the way to Adirondack Circle. So they'll have a one-seat ride to get to all of the shopping and things that are in the Route 7 corridor. And then this green zone, which roughly goes, let's see, that's Exchange Street, there's Happy Valley Road up here. Down at the southern end, that's roughly where Middlebury Studio School is. We get a lot of after-school programs that want to get rides there. And then, so you've got Porter Medical, and we go past that, and then Middlebury College, and we would still serve Marble Works and the Woodbridge neighborhood. So yeah, instead of buses going back and forth and serving fixed stops at fixed schedules, the drivers will have a tablet on board that will say, it will aggregate rides, so they may have up to 4 people to pick up progressively and drop off within this entire zone.
I would tell you this must be doing Nick good, because Nick's been talking about this exact model for several years. That's awesome. Okay. Well,
This is not going to replace the volunteer services, is it?
It's going to augment it significantly.
Okay.
So for rides that begin and end in Middlebury, those can be challenging to match.
Yep.
So, and it's an eligibility program. So if you are in the elders and disabled category, you get 6 per month.
Yep.
So that you gotta fit in all your doctor's appointments and all your food shopping and bingo and whatever you wanna do. But this gives our elders and our disabled population the freedom of riding a public bus.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
And it comes right to their door, and it goes right to their destination door. This might be familiar. During the bridge closure, we had bought a small paratransit van with help from St. Stephen's Church. And it fits up to 2 wheelchairs, which is an ADA requirement of federally funded service. And so I personally would say, let's get a hybrid, but we have to use the state contracts that are available. And this is what we can get for the most fuel efficiency and size efficiency. So we're working to order 2 of these, and that will help us achieve, if you can go to the bottom of that, it shows how the current MSB neighborhood loops that serve College, Hospital, Marble Works, and Shaw's stacks up to the pilot proposal. Currently, that's a Monday through Saturday service, the neighborhood loops that is. With microtransit, we don't have staffing on Saturdays. So microtransit would be Monday through Friday only, and then on Saturdays, we would revert to the MSB schedules and stops. So people can still get to Desiree to do their laundry or do their food shopping, whatever they need to do. Frequency, currently we're serving each stop on the hour. With the microtransit, our consultants ran algorithms, and depending on peak traffic and demand, it'll be cut down to 5 to 20 minutes. Stop types currently are bus stop collection points where people walk out and wait. And with microtransit, it'll be virtually door to door. There are still some places where we won't bring the bus, so we won't be going on Pump Mill Bridge, for example, just because we don't want to do wear and tear on that. And there are some streets on the campus that we've been asked not to travel on. But besides that, these are little nimble vehicles that will be able to get close to where people want to be picked up and go. Currently, as I mentioned, we have one neighborhood bus that's looping, and with microtransit, we would have 2. Average trip duration on the current bus is 15 minutes to complete a trip, and with microtransit, door to door, it'll take about 7 minutes, depending on traffic and time of day. So we were targeting a rollout of July of this year. Like I said, we've completed our feasibility study. We have an RFP out right now for vendors to build the software that'll operate the system. We do have one vacancy in our dispatch department, and we really need to fill that to handle the expected increase in call volume. We could launch with our current cutaways if we really needed to. But for optimal efficiency, we're hoping to get the 2 small vans in place before we start. And we're currently soft testing by using a staff vehicle and a paid staff member, and we're aggregating trips. Instead of putting them on volunteer cars, we're giving someone a manifest and having them go around and pick people up, and it's been a big help. And so we're thinking if for the E&D program alone, it's going to be a huge boon. But also, we'll be able to get into more little neighborhoods and more places for bus service as well. So there's pros all around. You may have heard that GMT is currently running a microtransit. They're the only one in the state right now. It's in Montpelier. It's called My Ride. They launched right at the height of COVID. They weren't able to do a lot of outreach, but they are succeeding in reaching more places and providing more rides. They have more unique riders than they ever had before. They've learned not to use buses, but to use small, nimble vans, which is leading this decision. They had let go of one of the shuttles that serves the Berlin Hospital, and that was causing them to have to do longer trip in succession. They would get back to town and they would get another call saying, you have to go all the way out there again. So they are bringing back that fixed service so that they can be more efficient, and that kind of underscores our planning of keeping the Hannaford, so that reinforces that decision as well. Yeah.
I think you've covered it.
Amazing.
Any questions?
Yeah, I saw an article about the microtransit, maybe in the middle of last year that it was coming, and reached out to Kathleen and said, can we please talk to TVT about this? And she said, oh, let's do it during the budget season when we bring people in. And this is super exciting. When I was in Montpelier with GMT and on City Council, we had the circulator buses that we called ghost buses because it felt like all they were driving around was ghosts. So frequently empty, and the idea of using the ride share technology for municipal transit just seems like such a good and timely and and way to improve service in a community like this, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, even the drivers are really excited for this new work environment that they're going to have, and all the new people that they're going to be serving. So, thank you for that.
I have two somewhat pragmatic questions. You said people with disabilities will have 6 rides. Is that round trip or is that one way? A month.
So currently they have six round trip rides per month.
Oh, yeah, that was my question. And then you said there will be an app. Does the app exist? Can I put the app on my phone?
They're building it. Well, we
Okay.
have to select
Not
the
ready.
vendor. We have the RFP out to, there's VIA, there's HBSS, there's probably 30 vendors that I sent RFP requests out to.
And is this like is this an app they're building specifically for Tri-Valley Transit, or are these companies that sort of do this for transit across the country?
Yes.
Okay.
That one.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just curious.
Yes.
Doesn't have anything to do with anything. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I got a note from my wife, Caitlin Myers, who said that she is a huge fan of yours and that you are incredibly helpful and good to work with. And yeah,
We love all the North Branch kids.
yeah, it's good.
They're wonderful. All right.
Thank you, Mary
Thank you
Claire.
very much.
Yes. So next is Joe and Dana, and they're going to present the project team report update for the ILSI 100.
Kathleen, could you promote Henry Erickson, please?
Henry
Erickson, thanks, yeah. Well, the fact is, you guys have just been talking about the budget and funding, and I just wanted you to know that you are not the first leaders of the community to deal with this issue. And looking into the history of the library, in 1911, we first had to deal with issues of salary and employment, and a person was hired to check in books and shelve them at the rate of 20 cents per hour.
Are they still available?
And this also extends.
They're still there.
This also extends to capital projects, because as you know, we're the ILSI 100 project team celebrating the 100th anniversary of the completion of the library, which I regret to tell you had a bit of a cost overrun to the tune of about 8%, because it was scheduled to come in at $50,000 and it came in at $54,000 for the original building. So.
Where'd you dig up this information?
The library keeps pretty good records, not surprisingly. So we have a very extensive timeline on our website that Joe has been perusing.
I
You
love
can
it.
all access it. There's tons of fun little tidbits in there, actually.
We have some things you could digitize for us.
Well, so I guess that segues us into why we're here tonight, which is to talk about the report that we submitted, which covers the 4 options the project team has been considering. And I'm going to touch briefly on each of those, and then Joe will talk about next steps. But I wonder if first we could ask Henry. Hi, Henry. I have to remember to look at the owl so that I'm looking at you. I was wondering if you could just introduce yourself. This is Henry Erickson, and maybe talk briefly about order of magnitude estimates and what they are, since those are give some context to the numbers that we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, so my name's Henry Erickson. I have my own consulting business for project estimating and project management. And the order of magnitude budgets are meant to provide a budget that approximate what the cost of a project that is looked at for a future piece. So I get the information from the committee about the scope and the work, and what the order of magnitude budgets do in this particular case is that they're developed to compare the different options, and that is the piece that really has helped move things forward. And it's so that you can do comparative costs. So the strategy in doing this type of estimating is to get the costs in the same methodology and having a good comparison between each different project option.
Awesome. Thank you, Henry. So we were really lucky to get to work with Henry and have him help us come up with these estimates that we're going to talk about tonight. And he'll stick around to answer questions.
We're passing, we spared you this, but Dana's put together a binder which contains the detailed estimates that Henry provided for us. It's 80-plus pages for those 4 different options to give you a sense of the comprehensive nature of these estimates.
So I think everyone's already aware of the 4 options we looked at. Of the 4, the project team has already decided to sort of take 2 out of the running. So option A, which was just to renovate and repair the existing structure, no expansion, that was going to come in at about $5.5 million. And the project team decided not to consider that option further because it's a lot of money for no additional space. Essentially, we would be repairing our mechanical systems, and it would make the building more habitable. But we wouldn't have any new spaces. We wouldn't be able to achieve any of those exciting things that we talked about with the vision, and all of the accessibility and safety and programmatic concerns would remain. So essentially, it felt like over $5 million for a first step, and then we would still need a renovation in a few years. The other option the project team decided to sort of take off the table is option C, which was to renovate the current building and then create an annex downtown. And for the purposes of this exercise, they considered the Ben Franklin building. The reason we decided not to go forward with that was largely the negative impact that would have on the library's mission. After really thinking about that option carefully, there's just no way to do it without separating the adult services and collections from the youth services and collections. So it would be really tough for families to be able to access resources for everyone in the family. We would lose out on that great intergenerational gathering, which is so important to people. And then there'd also be a lot of inefficiencies. So we'd have to duplicate some services in both locations. We'd have to hire additional staff, and then we'd be maintaining 2 buildings. So the remaining options, which we'll be soliciting community feedback on next week, are option B, which is to renovate and expand the existing building on the current property footprint. That came in at $14.8 million. And then the final option, of course, is reimagining and building new in the lower parking lot as part of some sort of revisited EDI process. And Henry helped us come up with some figures for that, which would be $15.5 million for the library portion, and that would be on top of 2 levels of parking garage, and the parking garage would be $7.6 million, so a total of 23 for that. And we can talk about the pros and the cons and any other budget details, but I think first Joe will talk about next steps, and then we can
Well,
get into
and
questions.
I just wanted to jump in for a second and say that the work that Henry did for us with his real expertise was looking at the hard costs of labor and materials. And so that was kind of the first figure that he came up with, and then from that, he extrapolated some of the soft costs, such as contractors' general conditions, contingency, escalation, and so on, which gave us another subtotal. And to that, we then added 20%, the typical 10% for owner's costs and 10% for design purposes, so that the figure that you see there represents all of those things. So as Dana said, the next steps for us in the process are another round of public input. We'll be having a meeting next week with 2 of our main constituencies, some members of the retirement community and some parents of young children at Mary Hogan. We'll be having 2 open meetings. One will be next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. We thought, the select board, they usually keep their Tuesday nights open. Let's make it convenient for them to come. The other will be Friday at noon. And so after the project team has had a chance to absorb some of the public input, we hope shortly after that to be making a recommendation. And so that's going to kind of change our dynamics a little bit, because up to this point, when Dana and I have come before you, it's been pretty much to report on what we've been doing. Well, we've been doing this, we've been doing this. I think we did come to you at one point and say, could we have some money to hire Henry? And you gave us the go-ahead to do that. But the next time we come before you is likely to be February 14th, and we will have a little Valentine for you in the form, we hope, of a recommendation to pursue one of these options. And at that point, things change a little bit, because then it's over to you to decide what to do next, as it were. The ball's kind of going to be in your court. Of our two options, if the recommendation is to go with building new in the EDI site, that's a rather large and complex process. That really almost goes beyond the scope of what this team has been tasked to do. And so to a certain extent, we'd be kind of turning things back over to you. On the other hand, if the recommendation is for option B, to build or renovate and expand in the current location, that's a somewhat less complex process. We wouldn't need to be concerned about issues related necessarily to a parking garage or wetlands, or how does it relate to the Cross Street Bridge, and so on. So if that was the recommendation, we would hope to come to you with a proposed plan of action. And it would be up to you to either approve that plan or propose a different plan for moving ahead. I think that regardless of which of these plans we go with, we're kind of thinking about what we've been referring to as the EDI site kind of as a whole. And I think that sometimes when we use that term EDI, we're thinking of the parking lot down the hill. And I think perhaps as a select board, you're going to want to be thinking a little bit larger, maybe the block. What's the area between Main Street on the one hand and Otter Creek on the other hand, and Cross Street on one hand and Bakery Lane on the other hand. Obviously, the town does not own or control all of the properties in between there, but you may want to be thinking about that a little bit more holistically, and so we certainly hope the library would be part of that process. But frankly, at the moment, we're feeling pretty good about the work we've been doing for you. We feel a lot of momentum since we first came in the summer of 2021, the trustees, and said, hey, how about a charge to a building committee? And you said, well, how about a working group? And so you gave us 6 months to do some work, which we did in 4 months. Thank you, Lindsay, right, and Dan, and got back to you. And since last March, this committee has just been, I had a communique the other day from a member of the committee. Do we have to keep meeting every 2 weeks? I'm getting a little worn out here. At any rate, we've been doing a lot of work on this. We're especially grateful for the work of first Judith Harris and more recently Beth Dow, who've been acting as liaisons to our town manager to make sure that Kathleen is up to speed with everything that we've been doing. And of course, we're glad to have Dan and Farhad working with us. So we're very eager to move this project ahead and to work with you. We don't want to see any precipitous decisions, but we do hope that we'll be able to move things along. So if you guys have things to talk about or questions for me or Dana or Henry, we would be glad to hear your thoughts and questions.
Was it Farhad that was complaining about too many meetings?
It was not Farhad, no. Farhad is always there.
Thank you. I have a comment and a question. The comment is, I just want to appreciate all that both of you do for us. The passion that you have. One of the examples is Joe, when he sends his Christmas card, it has Ilsley on it, on the Christmas card. So that shows your passion. So thank you for doing that. The question I have is on option D. Just want to point out that foundation is not included, right?
So for option, well, maybe I should let Henry handle that one, actually.
Yep. I was going to ask that.
So, could you repeat the question?
No, on the option D, if it's library only, that's $15.5 million. We didn't account for a foundation for that, right?
On option B, option B was.
So
Option D.
Span.
No, option D.
Option D is in
D,
dog.
Yes. Yeah, that included the site work excavation for the parking garage. And then it also included the footprint for the library is smaller than the parking garage. So it included work on the upper level, which would be level of the parking lot.
Okay.
For putting in an exterior plaza around the building. And also, because it was being built into the bank for the parking garage piece, we had to add in, I think, it's 18-foot retaining wall to hold the soils and piece things in place. So, yeah, the site work was included with a nominal amount of working in the parking, doing something in the parking lot.
But Henry,
So-
I'm sorry, Henry, is the assumption there, because we want to also think, what if we were to build new in a different site or a different location? For the estimate that you gave for that option, is the cost of a foundation subsumed under the cost of the parking garage? In other words, would we need to add something to the cost of the building alone?
Yeah, and I think, Dana, I provided you
Yes.
a square foot number, and I gave you a range for that, and I don't have that right in front of me, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically,
If you're gonna build somewhere else.
yeah, we just don't want it to be misleading. Where it says library only $15.5 million, that doesn't mean to build a library on a field would be $15.5 million, because the foundation for this library is covered in the cost of the parking lot. So it would, parking garage, the 2 levels of parking. So if we were gonna build, if someone's wondering what it would cost to build a brand new library in a field without a parking garage, not as part of the EDI site, it would be more than $15.5 million.
I have some inside knowledge of Ilsley Library and thoughts around this. There's a large cost with the transition. If we renovate the existing building to maintain services during that time. Is there a discount that would be implied with having a new building such that you only have to move once?
Yeah, because we'd only have to move once, and it's possible that we might not have to pay rent because we could conceivably continue occupying the existing building before moving into the new one. I mean, that could also be optimistic, because that assumes that
continues to work.
that we can continue to occupy the building. I mean, there's also an alternative reality in which no matter which option we pick, we have to move into a temporary location sooner than we think. It's just hard to say. But that, I think some of those issues of whether we would have to move and how many times are reflected in the pros and cons.
Could we get an electronic version of the big packet, at least for the 2 options that are still on?
The binder?
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be helpful.
Yeah.
You really want one of those?
I do.
Okay.
What am
Good
I doing
stuff.
on a Friday
It's so
night?
detailed. Amazing.
There was toilet rolls in
Yeah.
Yeah.
$3.
Molding.
Henry, that was great work. So detailed, really outlines for everybody exactly what we're looking for.
Can I ask what might be a weird question, but does all of this factor in the weight of the books, like into the structure?
Yes, that's a great question, and it certainly does.
I grew up in Amherst, and the UMass, every other floor is empty because they failed to calculate adequately.
No kidding.
For their college library. It's kind of
Yeah.
embarrassing.
Thank you for bringing that up, because it's important for everyone in the community to understand eventually that that's part of why libraries are expensive to build, is because every single floor needs to be able to be load bearing, and books weigh a lot. And one of the first questions I asked Henry was, you know that libraries have to be a little different, right? And he was way ahead of me, and he had special software just for libraries, and yeah, that's definitely taken into account in these figures.
Other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, we'll just finish
Yeah.
by,
Thanks, everybody, it was great to see you.
thank
Yeah,
you.
same.
Thanks, Henry.
Thanks, Henry.
We just want to mention to all those Middlebury College students who are waiting for their turn that the Ilsley Public Library is open to you as well. Do stop by when you're in town. And also, last night at the Ilsley trustees meeting, I think I managed for the first time since I've been president to end the meeting early. And so my advice is all you need to do is to have the heating system of your building fail, and this is very motivational to get your meetings done faster.
It was chilly last night in the
It was
library,
chilly.
but it's been fixed as of
Okay.
today.
Yep.
We're okay. Thank
Thank
you,
you all.
everyone.
See you Thursday.
Yeah, see you Thursday.
I'm gonna turn the heat off in here one night and try that.
Are Tabitha and Lisa with us?
They are.
And Friday will be remote.
Okay, so this evening Tabitha and Lisa are going to walk us through the results of the Town of Middlebury Racial Equity Survey.
Good evening, hi.
Good evening.
It was so funny, Lisa and I were just talking to each other. We were so excited because I kept hearing EDI and thinking it was like equity, justice, and freedom. Like that. I think $5 billion. It was about the library, which is equally as important, but just goes to show that acronyms are not the same in different structures. But I realized that we were supposed to be on at 8:05, and I have a 9 o'clock meeting. And that's not enough time for us to go through the entire results for you. When we did it with the committee, it was, what was it, probably about 45 minutes easily, and then to go over the update. So Kathleen was just asking us if we wanted to move it to the 24th. So it's up to you all as a committee. We can give you a brief synopsis, but we can't go over everything the way we did with the committee, just given how far behind we are in time right now. So we can give you a couple of options. One is that we can push everything to that or another date. Two is that we can just give you a quick little soundbite today and tell you where we are moving forward. Or three, if you have another idea, you're here for it.
Okay, that's appreciated. Do we have the Middlebury College students also standing by to brief us?
We do. Tabitha has to be out of here in like 5 minutes, so it would be a very brief.
I don't think we start diving in because you can't have just a brief discussion about this topic. So
Let's do on the 24th. Yeah.
I think we move it to the 24th then. And apologize that our schedule got pushed way back, but we appreciate your flexibility on this.
Sure. And
Oh, absolutely, no problem at all. And I know Lisa's, I think she's traveling that day, so we'll coordinate with Kathleen. And I don't mind presenting. We'll figure it out behind the scenes. And just so you know, our next steps, we're really excited to come into this third phase where we're putting the newly kind of evolved committee together and looking forward to doing that work with you all. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's great to see all of you.
Yeah,
Happy
same.
New Year, and
seeing you.
we look forward to seeing you soon, okay?
Good seeing you.
Thank you.
Have a
All
good
right,
night.
take care. Thank you.
I never want to have a 9 o'clock meeting unless it's the two brothers.
she's a college
is a-
student in California.
Oh, jeez.
Oh,
Oh.
okay.
So then, with that, we're going to push that to the 24th, and we'll invite Middlebury College professor Jessica Teets and her students. They're going to present a short briefing on their qualitative research methods and analysis of what the region did on ARPA funding.
Okay, everybody can hear me?
We can.
Hi, Jessica. I promoted Eliza.
Perfect.
Is there anyone else that needs to join you?
I wasn't able to see the.
Okay, I don't think I have Emily Josselson, Chris Robbins, and Ann Christie, and George Cloak.
Nope,
Okay.
no, it's just us then.
Yeah.
And is it okay if I share my screen?
Yep. Are you able to do that?
It's saying it's disabled.
Yeah. So I just made you the co-host, so you should be able to go.
Okay. Yes, now I can. Great.
Okay. So I think a lot of you already know that we were, this was a fall class at the college, qualitative research methods, but I just wanted to give you a little background for those of you who didn't talk to the students and might not know as much. So what we were doing was, I was teaching a qualitative research methods class with about 20 students at the college in the fall. And so while we were studying these different research methods like surveys and interviews, we wanted to pick a question that was in our community where we could learn about using these research methods and then also learn about important issues in the community. And so we decided to study how the different towns are using ARPA money. And the reason that we picked this question is that it's a large source of funding that isn't from taxpayers, right? Sort of a one-time payment to towns, and towns get to decide how to use it, and there aren't a lot of guidelines about how to use it. And so what we decided we wanted to study was we wanted to try to figure out how different select boards were deciding how to spend this money. So were they all thinking about it the same way, or were they thinking about it in different ways? And then also this question about the role of public participation and what sort of role does it play in these funding decisions. And so what we did was the process tracing team used all of the documents, the legal documents from the state, and also the documents that the Vermont League of Cities and Towns have put together with their ARPA tracking task force. And so they put together the entire process. And then we did interviews in Middlebury, Bristol, Vergennes, and Weybridge with select board members. And then we also did 2 surveys. One was with select board members in Addison County, and the other was with citizens in Addison County. And so what I'd like to show you are the results, with the hope that you all, gave us your time, and we're trying to provide the findings of what we studied back to you. And so this is the timeline, which you're probably very familiar with. And most towns, other than Weybridge, took the standard allowance and used ARPA funding as revenue replacement, so that rolled that money into their budget. And it's unclear exactly what that means as far as accounting for those funds, because there are certain restrictions on ARPA money, like it can't be used to offset taxes, and it can't be used to invest and then like draw income from. So it's unclear if this money is then rolled into the budget through revenue replacement, exactly how the auditing process will happen. That's just one of the many mysteries that we found about the ARPA process. And so as far as the interview findings by town, these are the 4 towns that we interviewed. And the first town was Middlebury. This is you. So this information is familiar to you all, so I won't go through it except a quick summary, just that you've taken the revenue replacement, so this money is in your budget, and you intend to spend it mostly through the master plan and through public works. For Vergennes, when we interviewed the select board members there, they also had a focus on using the money for infrastructure, but there was sort of a divided opinion there among the select board members in that they also wanted to have something more to show for it, right? So instead of just sort of chipping away at a larger budget of projects, that maybe there was something that ARPA money could do that would amplify what they're already planning to do. And then what they're concerned with were probably similar things to what you're worried about too, right? How to prioritize this spending. So what sort of a framework do you use in order to decide how to spend it? And also that although the money seems like a large amount as a one-time infusion, it's actually not that much when you look at overall budgets, right? So it's not going to pay for all of your sidewalks or all of your roads or something like that. As far as public outreach in Vergennes, they haven't pursued public participation yet. They weren't sure necessarily if they want to do that, but we presented in their select board meeting earlier this evening, and they have decided that they would like to try to get more public participation and understand what people's needs are. So this is in progress. In Weybridge, they were much earlier in the process, so they haven't taken the money as revenue replacement. It's still sitting there sort of in an ARPA fund, and they also haven't necessarily determined how to spend the money. They have allocated money to Maple Broadband, but after that allocation, they decided that they wanted to stop and think more about how to spend that money. So they're at a very early stage. Right now, what they're considering doing is sending out a survey to local residents and trying to figure out what people think the money should be spent on. Bristol is probably the furthest along as far as public outreach. So they created a committee, an ARPA committee, a citizen committee, and this committee has been gathering information in a number of different formats. They also received formal proposals from Turning Point, Maple Broadband, and other groups. And what they're going to be doing is presenting a prioritized list of funding options to the select board in April after the town meeting. And I wanted to show you a quick case study of the Bristol ARPA committee before I go into the survey results. So this is a 9-member citizen advisory committee. And again, their date to get these ideas to the select board is April after town meeting. What they've done so far is they collected information first from focus groups, so 4 different focus groups focused on education and youth, local businesses, local nonprofits, and then the town departments. And in those settings, they try to not only collect individual ideas, but also sort of the cross-fertilization of the discussion to see if small ideas could build up to something bigger. They also did surveys, and this is the example of the survey that was used. So this was sent out on Front Porch Forum. It was also these postcards were printed out and they were stacked with drop boxes at the town office and at the library. And then committee members took these postcards to places where we knew lots of people would be. So the Harvest Festival, the Creamy Stand in the summer, the town landfill on Saturday mornings where people bring their trash to be collected. And we filled these out by hand as well. And then they also did a spaghetti dinner. This was held at the local elementary school, and it had free food and also free childcare. And the idea was to try to collect ideas from busy families who might not be doing things like taking surveys. And so as far as results, they were able to collect over 500 ideas, and they distilled these down into a list of 20. And they used the framework of what serves the most people, helps the neediest people, represents an enduring investment and not just a one-off, and might leverage more investment like grants in Bristol. And so they've narrowed that down to 20 ideas, and now they're sending out a survey that will allow residents to rank those 20 suggestions and see which ones people want. And then what they'll do is they'll take those results, that list of 20, and they'll share that with the select board. They also will do a presentation to the town at town meeting in March. So that's what Bristol's doing as far as soliciting public input. As far as the survey findings, what we did was we sent out surveys to the select board members in Addison County and then also citizens. And what we found when we asked about priorities for ARPA spending is we found a little bit of a gap. So the blue bar are citizens and the orange bar, those are select board members. So you can see that select board members are mostly prioritizing infrastructure, but when we asked citizens what they prioritized, you can see that they were looking more at specific problems that were probably not due to COVID, but became more apparent due to COVID, like affordable housing and childcare. And when we asked citizens specifically what sort of harm or negative impact they had from COVID, you can see that a lot of them lost jobs and lost income. But we also found that a lot of these tended to interact. So a lot of the parents, for example, who lost jobs or lost income, they reported that they needed to continue paying for expensive childcare spots so that they didn't lose their space, so that when they did get their job back or when they got more shifts, that they would have the childcare coverage necessary. And so we saw this sort of interaction between a couple of different problems due to COVID. So the graph on the left is the select board survey, and the graph on the right is citizen surveys. And this is where we were asking about public participation. Oops, sorry. And for the select board, they they basically are saying that public participation is sometimes important or mostly important. And when we look at citizens and what they were reporting as far as how effective towns were for collecting public opinions or soliciting opinions, you can see that that idea about the role of public input not being that important was reflected with citizens too. When we ask where in the process should public opinion be used with the select board survey, you can see that it's sort of a passive idea of public input, that the public should be regularly updated about select board decisions. And you can see that this is mirrored when we think about, for the select board, what type of outreach have they done or do they plan to do regarding ARPA funds. You can again see that it's slightly more passive in that they're accepting proposals from groups like Maple Broadband, Turning Point, etc. And then most select boards are regularly listing ARPA updates on their select board agenda. And so the idea is, of course, that citizens can participate and that this is on the agenda. But when we ask citizens if they are having many updates about ARPA or if they know about how the funds are being used, you can see that there are very few sources of information that citizens are saying that they see. So this leads us into our recommendations. And again, I know that it can be really frustrating from the point of the select board in that you have done a lot to make these meetings very open to the public, right? So they're recorded, they're open meetings, the agenda is advertised ahead of time. And so you're actively soliciting public input, but a lot of times citizens are saying they don't know what's happening or they don't feel that they're being included. And so one thing that we were suggesting is that the select board solicit more input from citizens about what sort of harm they've had from COVID and how the ARPA funding might be used to address some of those negative impacts. And that hopefully this will give, maybe ideas that you hadn't necessarily thought of, but at the very least it would also increase public trust in the process. And that maybe this solicitation of public input could also be more active and less passive. And so this might be the idea of, actively sharing updates or soliciting ideas on Front Porch Forum or through a survey, the town website, or making a presentation at town meeting or some sort of an update there. So let me go ahead and stop sharing so that you can see us instead of my screen. And we're happy to take any questions that you might have about the process or our findings, what the other towns are doing, anything like that.
Anyone?
It's tough to top Bristol for throwing a party, though.
500.
They're always good. That is the most social town.
That is they're.
It's always fun to go to Bristol.
They've got the social aspect down.
Yeah.
Curious, I didn't see the actual questions that you had in your survey and how you distributed your survey. It looked like the numbers weren't that high.
Yes, that was the challenge of trying to do the research in one semester. So we basically had about 6 weeks to actually conduct the research. And so we sent out the link. So when we, sent the survey to select board members, we also asked them to forward the link for the public survey to, their constituents. We also posted it on Front Porch Forum, but ideally, if we had more time, what you would do is you would, post up flyers like at the co-op and at the library, and you would try to actively solicit more responses. We didn't have that option, unfortunately, especially with the Thanksgiving holiday and then into the Christmas holiday. So this is what we could do. So, I wouldn't take these as sort of scientific findings. I would take them more as sort of initial findings about what people are saying and what the select board members are saying. So we're not necessarily saying that you should, take this as exactly what the process is, but just some things that we've identified that might be gaps between what the select board is doing and what citizens are thinking, and maybe some ways just to collect more public input and have more public engagement.
Yeah, and I think the value of a survey is certainly good. I just would look for a representative survey that touches all factions, and then some questions. I would have probably put some questions in that would include things that were near and dear, because we're in the budgeting phase right now, and how important is it to have this be something that accomplishes something without having a long-term budget ramifications. So, I mean, we've had those discussions at the select board level, and the original intention for that was a little more specific. They opened it up some, but I think that the intent of the funding didn't allow for 500 suggestions. It was a little more pointed. So, but I think it's great. It's enjoyable to see what the students are doing. Eliza chased us hard, and I think you need to give her an atta girl for being able to get anything out of our board, because I think we were all busy. That's a tough time for us. So God bless you for being able to come up with something meaningful, and we appreciate you sharing it with us.
Jessica?
Yes, and also if at a later date you decide that you would like to do surveys or focus groups or spaghetti dinners or whatever, I'm happy to, share ideas with you and help you do those things too.
Do you intend?
I just wanted to add, and sorry for this.
No, go ahead.
Emails you all received from me. I apologize. Last time I saw you as well, and this time it's 5 more. So, it's nice to meet you all again. But I did just want to add that I think, as someone that sat in on the other select board meetings in town and then interviewed a few of you, and then also was in class reading through the surveys. I think explanations that I heard from a lot of in interviews about why the process is the way it is makes a lot of sense, and the rationale behind going to Public Works and the sort of storylines behind all of those projects made a lot of sense to me. So even if that isn't necessarily soliciting more opinions, I think when you hear the story, you understand sort of the goings on in the town, and maybe more Middlebury citizens do than other citizens, and the survey did or didn't reflect that. But I think it did make a lot of sense. I think there just were other little places that was interesting to see where people had wanted things, but hearing from each of you was really exciting, and it all I was quick to defend the Middlebury Selectboard in my interview group, so thank you all for taking the time.
I hope Eliza gets an A, because she was very good. She was very professional. She did dog us, and she had great techniques in questioning us. It was fun talking to her. So.
I'm wondering,
Yes, thank you.
Jessica,
Thank you all very much for participating. And I just wanted to sort of end with, in addition to offering my assistance, if you want to collect more public input, was also to say that, Katie, who's running the ARPA tracking at the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, is also a great resource, so feel free to reach out to her as well. Lindsay, did I cut you off when you were asking the question?
The owl, there's always a lag on your end. So yeah, I'm just curious, do you plan to follow up with a future class what the results actually are? And if so, I'd like to see it.
Yeah. Great. Yes, I would love to do that. I think I will have to see how much happens between this time teaching it, and then I think I'm going to do it again in the fall. So if you all decide to spend the money that fast, then I definitely will study it. If not, I'll come back to it.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Okay, Kathleen's has got maybe some info on the equalization results?
Yes, so in your packet, you had a letter from the State Division Property Valuation and Review indicating that our common level of appraisal had fallen below the state required limit of 85% at 83.88%. Allison Dickinson has been in contact with the state, and they have come to the conclusion that the select board should submit a letter of review of that determination that a reappraisal is in order. There were a couple of commercial transactions that Allison found that she would like to, that are throwing off the CLA, that may be contestable and help with that current determination. But she will draft the letter, and we will present it to you at your next meeting.
When was our last townwide appraisal done?
2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would expect that every town that hasn't done an appraisal in the last 12 months is below the CLA right now.
And that's exactly what they.
That's the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why, but it
Is this-
impacts some
is-
of us greater than
Is
others.
the state's numbers for the CLA,
Various
is
reasons
that's just
too,
all
so.
based on sales?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, in part of, since a lot of people, a lot of towns are going to have to do the reappraisal, there is also a strategy that, sure, we'll schedule one in 5 to 10 years. And so
Right.
that's, we're also pursuing that avenue.
There's only so many appraisers too, right? They can't do everyone in 1 year.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right now, they're scheduling out to 2026.
Sure.
With just a few towns in need of it.
Okay, I promised Ann I would come back to her. If we could give Ann 2 minutes?
Yeah. Hi there, Ann.
There we go, and I'm unmuted. Thank you for giving me 2 minutes. I received the email that your invitation to speak during citizens' comments brought me into the meeting, and I missed your meeting last week. And I believe that Kathleen sent you the information that I emailed to her and Brian Monday. I just had some more points about the airport that I'm planning on giving to V-Trans during their comment period that I thought you might like to consider. I'll try to go quickly. I think the last one is the one where you may have questions. I'm not sure. The first 3 are regarding the aquifer. And there had been talk about putting a metal holding tank under the new above-ground fuel tank that'll be coming in. There's a question of whether about the procedure for fuel cleanup if an airplane does go down, especially in the wetlands. And that's most relevant because the airplanes use the unleaded fuel, and there are some studies that are out about children living in vicinities of airports. So there's details in what I typed. And then the use of herbicide. The V-Trans is using what the state allows, but personally I'm not comfortable with that. I think that there could be some other methods of keeping the fence line clear that will contribute towards cleaner water. Then Ross Conrad spoke about the climate change language to be included in the master plan, specifically some charging stations for both cars and planes. And I noticed that you asked for some cost sharing with maintenance of airport road, and I wondered if there was any need or way that you might get some cost savings from the residences around the airport whose taxes have gone down because of the proximity. I don't know how many there are. I know there's at least one. And the last one is from my years of being a speech pathologist. There was a lot of discussion about the confusion between number of operations and number of flights in the master plan. And it would be very easy to insert, maybe my idea is in parentheses, after number of operations, how many flights that would mean, which would be fewer than half of the number of operations. And also in parentheses could be added what an operation is, the definition, which is that it's the number of clicks on the tool for a takeoff, landing, and communication. So thank you for considering those with the letter that I read that Kathleen was drafting from last week. Hope it's
Okay,
helpful.
thank you, Ann.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And I think she sent a copy to Kathleen, so,
And I just sent
Yeah, I
that to
saw
all
that.
of your emails.
okay. All right, next is check warrants.
That was me.
Okay, Isabel.
I move to approve total expenditures for accounts payable in the amount of $129,141.95 for the period of January 4th, 2023 through January 10th, 2023.
Second.
What was that dollar figure again? Is that the correct one or the one in the notes?
It's 129. Yeah.
Okay. I think that was
That-
different
Did I
than what's in
misspeak?
the.
Yeah, there may have been something added to it.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Those opposed? Okay, board member concerns. Farhad?
Just a question on our packet, we have the request for funding from NeighborWorks. And I don't see a dollar amount on that.
Okay, so NeighborWorks has requested funding several times, and several times we've notified them, including this year, that they need to submit a petition in order to be funding. Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay.
They are not currently one of our funding agencies.
Did they come to us last year?
They may have submitted a letter, but I don't think
I
they.
don't remember seeing them, yeah. Okay.
So we have had a letter, an email, and a direct conversation with the executive director of NeighborWorks about the petitioning process.
Okay. Andy?
I just wanted to say that I attended the DRB meeting last night, my first DRB meeting in Middlebury, and was really impressed by the process and how it went. Thought it was lovely. I'm glad to see the people we appoint taking their responsibilities seriously and doing a great job of going through the steps and processes.
Very deliberative, aren't they?
Oh my God, it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, Isabel?
The pump track has gotten its $6,000 worth of crowdfunding already. So I just checked before our meeting, so they already met their goal of $6,000 to get a 2-to-1 match in the state for I think it's the Better Places grant. So that should be moving along quickly.
So are you saying the pump track may be coming this summer?
Maybe coming this summer.
Andy's
Right.
buying a bike.
Okay, Dan?
I have
I
nothing.
can't afford it.
Do you have anything, Linz?
No.
Okay, then I'm gonna ask you to take us into executive session.
In accordance with Vermont's open meeting law requirements, I move that the board find that premature general knowledge of the consideration of personnel
Personnel.
matters would clearly place the select board at a substantial disadvantage because the select board risks disclosing its litigation strategy. Nope. Yeah, no, whatever. If it discusses the personnel matters in public.
Wait a second.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay.
I further move that the board enter into executive session for
The above said.
Personnel matters.
personnel matters under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of the Vermont statutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, so we're going into executive session at 9:14. So just give them a minute to